Back in December, I decided I wanted to do a little bit more everyday film photography, and as much as I love my Mamiya, its size isn't really convenient as an everyday carry, and I don't always have the time to stop for light metering. Previously, I've used the Kodak Ultra F9, a great little point and shoot that fits in your pocket, but I wanted to use something a bit more dynamic, and as a film photographer, this was a great excuse to add a new camera to my collection. After a bit of research, I found the Minolta Riva Zoom series. These cameras are point and shoot and were produced in the 90s and 2000s. I ended up picking up a Riva Zoom 90 off eBay for £30 and started using it as my everyday carry. I started by taking the camera with me on a trip to Budapest in January and loaded it with a roll of Glow 400, a film by Rito with vibrant warm tones where the yellows and greens really pop. Unfortunately, this was a pretty poor choice for Budapest in January, where I would barely see a sliver of sun the whole time, instead getting nothing but rain and grey skies. The Minolta Riva Zoom is named as such because of its zoom lens, ranging from 38 to 90mm, which is everything you really need for everyday photography. This came in really useful in Budapest, where I was shooting a mix of wider scenes and tighter street photography shots. These classic Budapest shots of St. Stephen's Basilica, shot from a narrow street, look particularly nice on film, and the people holding umbrellas in the foreground add some nice depth to the shots. The camera is autofocus, as point and shoots usually are, but I can't complain with its performance, with subjects such as the many trams I shot in Budapest always being in focus. My second day in Budapest started with finding a dilapidated phone box which was a must shoot on film, perfectly capturing a 90s vibe to match the era the camera is from. After exploring the cave church, which is exactly what it sounds like, we headed up Gellert Hill, which provides incredible views over the city. Here I took what is my favourite film shot from the trip, a moody shot of the city, with the Liberty Bridge and someone looking out from a viewing platform in the foreground. Some really nice layers to this shot. After taking my final shot on the Glow 400, I took it to a photography shop called Analog Cafe. The developing here was reasonably priced and only took a couple of days to get my shots back. I also picked up my next roll of film here, a roll of Lomachrome Metropolis which can be shot at 100, 200 or 400 ISO. However, since this film isn't DX coded, the Minolta defaulted to 100 ISO. When finishing a roll of film, the Minolta rewinds automatically, and when loading a roll, it flashes up with a symbol and won't actually let you shoot if you've loaded the film incorrectly, so it's pretty foolproof. It's pretty useful for someone like me who, after a couple of years of shooting film, still messes up occasionally. As this was my last day in Budapest, I only took a couple of shots there on this roll, since it was already getting dark when I loaded it. They aren't awful considering they're at 100 ISO, however the widest aperture on the Riva Zoom 90 is f4.8, so unless you're shooting close-ups with the flash on, I wouldn't recommend low light shooting. When it comes to the flash on the Riva Zoom 90, you have a few options. Auto flash, which I have on most of the time, fill flash, which forces the flash to fire regardless of light, flash cancel, which turns the flash off entirely, night portrait mode, which balances the flash and light exposure for shots of people at night, and landscape mode, which sets the focus to infinity. After Budapest, I continued using the Minolta as my everyday carry, and over the next month or so, I shot the roll of Metropolis, mostly on my commutes to and from work. Mostly I shot on sunnier days, but this didn't really make much of a difference as this film stock is really geared towards darker, moodier scenes with its extremely green tones. One day I did decide to shoot in bleaker conditions on a typical rainy Manchester day. I decided to shoot with the flash off as I was shooting street scenes where I usually prefer a bit more subtlety. Since I was shooting at 100 ISO, the camera of course used a slower shutter speed, and I unintentionally ended up with mostly slow shutter speed shots from this evening. I do actually like how these turned out, but my advice with this camera would be to just have the flash on auto regardless, unless you're going for this kind of look. The camera does also have a tripod mount and a self-timer, which is pretty useful in this sort of situation. The final few shots on the roll were fairly unremarkable, apart from a couple which ended up being highlights of the roll. The first of which was a pretty basic shot down an alleyway with a huge puddle, creating a reflection of the light which made for a pretty cool framing. The second of which was of a well-known spot at St. Peter's Square in Manchester, which to be fair is pretty difficult to take a bad shot of, but it works really well with the green tones of this film stock. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the Minolta as an everyday carry so far. Not every shot is incredible, but that can't really be expected from a budget point and shoot. On average per roll, I'm getting about 9 or 10 shots that I'm really happy with, which isn't bad at all for a camera that I bought for £30 off eBay. Since these first two rolls, I've been continuing to use the camera as an everyday carry, and recently took it with me on a trip to Berlin, where I'd say I got the best shots on this camera so far. So thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a like, please subscribe, go and check out some of my other work. Also go and give me a follow over on Instagram where I post all of my shots. Again, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.